I imagine most of us could agree on what would be considered moral or immoral. I think anyone watching this may consider an extreme action like murder immoral, right? However, if it's to save your significant other or children, many of us would find it acceptable or even necessary to do so. Morality is something that can change depending on situations, but even then, there is a thin line between what's right and wrong. Sicario is a film that explores this theme, albeit through the guise of the United States' war on drugs. However, the themes are still prevalent to real life. What is moral and immoral? What is really the greater good of something? The film asks these questions, and right at the film's conclusion, we are left feeling conflicted. So let's look at 3 characters to explain why our morality is being tested the entire time we're watching Sicario, as I believe these 3 characters all represent the film's themes. Kate begins the film as the character us, the audience, resonates with the most. She's a hard-working cop, but she's also idealistic and practical. She believes there are rules and laws that should be followed, and because of this, we view her as a morally correct character. And it's because of this we see her as the protagonist of the film, the lead, someone we, the audience, can identify with. However, that's exactly why Sicario is such a great film. It knows we will identify with Kate. So when she's introduced to the character of Matt, we, along with her, begin to feel uneasy because we know there's something off about this guy. Matt and his team consistently do things that put their morality into question, and Kate recognizes this, and so do we. However, this is why we are being tested, because Matt's entire mission is disguised as being for the greater good. His mission is to end or at least disrupt the war on drugs. Without getting into the politics of it all, the war on drugs is something on the surface many of us would consider a good thing. Drugs and drug-fueled operations kill millions annually, and this is something we could agree should probably be stopped. So in that regard, we agree with Matt, and so does Kate. However, we soon realize Matt is willing to stop the war on drugs by any means necessary, even if this means resorting to immoral actions himself. So we, like Kate, are instantly thrusted into a web of lies and questionable actions and decisions by Matt and his team. And she struggles to understand what's going on, and towards the end of the film even questions if everything they've done was any better than what the so-called bad guys were doing. Sicario successfully makes us question it all too. While Matt's actions may put innocent lives in jeopardy, we do understand he's fighting an evil that needs to be stopped. Maybe he's seen enough to know you can only fight this evil with evil itself. Or maybe he's a reckless CIA operative whose entire mission is a giant contradiction. Either way, us as the audience remain conflicted. So the reason I mentioned that Kate begins the film as the protagonist is because you can make the argument that by the end, she isn't. Her character is overshadowed and quite literally overpowered by Matt, but there's also another character even more enigmatic than himself. Alejandro is even harder to make the case for being moral than Matt is. Matt at least can use the war on drugs as a means to justify his actions. Alejandro is less concerned with justifying his actions. He can care less about being right or wrong. Where Kate and Matt at least shared some similar goals, her and Alejandro share none. In other words, he's the polar opposite of Kate. We never see Matt kill anyone innocent, but we see Alejandro kill at least 4 possibly innocent people. And to make matters worse, 2 of the innocent people were children. Now, before we close the chapter on Alejandro completely and just write him off as this evil, senseless character, What if I told you this was the reason for Alejandro committing these vicious acts? Does this change how you view him? I know it did for me, and I feel terrible about it. I know his actions were uncalled for, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't somewhat at least understand them. I even think Kate, to a degree, understands Alejandro better after this, but like us, Kate still knows his actions are wrong. She's confronted by Alejandro at the end of the film, fully understanding both Matt and Alejandro's actions, yet still is reluctant to sign a pre-written document stating everything was done by the book. This is because Kate at the end of the film still has her sense of morality, whereas Matt and Alejandro have both been corrupted. Alejandro tells her to leave the town specifically for this reason alone. He knows she hasn't yet been corrupted. A lot of people view this as a threat, but I view this as Alejandro looking out for Kate. And as she points the gun at Alejandro, I believe this represents what the entire film's themes are. Struggling to identify with what's moral or immoral, what's right and wrong. She ultimately doesn't shoot Alejandro because at this point, she really doesn't know. She, like us, may be naive to the evils of the world. She hasn't gone through what Matt, and especially Alejandro, have gone through. She accepts that she's not a wolf, but ultimately understands why they are. So while the film is centered on the morality of the war on drugs, I believe its lessons can apply to many scenarios in life. We all like to believe we have a good moral compass, but I imagine we all have a line where if crossed, we'll be willing to throw those morals out of the window. Sicario tests our morality in that regard. We identify with Kate because of her good-natured moral compass, but also understand the actions of Matt and even Alejandro, despite how heinous they may be. I ultimately believe this is why there's no real protagonist in the film. Kate, Matt, and Alejandro all represent different sides of right and wrong, and at different points in the film could all be considered the protagonists. I think this is why we are tested, because at certain points in the film, we can identify with all three of them. They are reflections of us, or at least they could be. I think the film's less focused on right and wrong. Instead, it's more so stating that we, like life, can be both right and wrong, moral and immoral. It just depends on the situation. And given the circumstance, we can be Kate, Matt, or Alejandro at any point in our lives. So Sicario is one of my favorite films of all time. Dennis Villeneuve is a top 5 director at the moment in my opinion, and Taylor Sheridan is proven he can be one of the best writers in Hollywood. However, I think Sicario is probably my favorite work from both of them. I think it's a movie that can be analyzed from so many different angles. There's the political commentary on the war on drugs, the collateral damage of war, revenge, the desensitization of violence, etc. It's a layered film, wonderfully acted and brilliantly directed, and can also be analyzed for its visual motifs as well. It gave birth to one of the greatest cinematic characters of all time in Alejandro, and it's just a brilliant movie all the way around. I give Sicario a 9.5 out of 10. However, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one in the comments below. Did you like it? Did you hate it? What was your takeaway from the film? As always, thank you so much for watching. I'm on my way to 100 subscribers and I can't thank y'all enough. I know that's not a big deal to some of you, but it's a big deal to me. And I'd like to reach it, and I would really appreciate your guys' help in helping me get there. If you're new, please hit that subscribe button and join the family. I'll catch you guys later.